Hello everybody, today we're going to be doing a deck tech on Jin-Gitaxias, Core Augur. He's a 10 drop, he is a legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor, Flash. At the beginning of your end step, draw 7 cards. Each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. So, typically, if you can stick him, there's no way you can lose the game. He takes a long time to actually be able to play, but that's okay because this deck is built up of just counter spells, ways to draw cards, ways to manipulate your library, mainly just a whole bunch of other things to slow our opponent down so that we can actually play Jin-Gitaxias. So for our couple one drops that we do have, Wizard class, you have no maximum hand size, is the most important part of this card because with Jin-Gitaxias, you're going to be drawing a bunch of cards, and it stinks if you have to discard down to hand size at the end of your turn. And then its other abilities are kind of cool, but the main one is no maximum hand size. Dive down. This is strictly to protect Jin-Gitaxias. We don't really have a lot of creatures in this deck, but the ones we do are really high profile, but Jin-Gitaxias is the main one we don't want to lose because 12 mana is way worse than 10. Opt, just the way we can look through our library. Terramender, because we have a bunch of instants and sorceries in the deck, it's hard not to be able to adapt him for 1 blue. Wash Away is an extremely good counterspell. It may as well say 1 mana counter target commander. Anticipate, just another way to dig through our deck. Brawl is very good for this deck. He makes everyone, or all your instant and sorcery spells 1 cheaper, and then when you counter a spell, you get a draw and discard a card. There's a whole bunch of counter spells in this deck. He really helps us find what we need. Blink of an Eye, there's no way to really mess around with enchantments too bad in blue, or artifacts too bad in blue, so sometimes we have to bounce them to our opponent's hands with stuff like this before we can counter it again. Callous Dismissal, kind of same deal, bouncing non-land permanents. Counterspell, very simple, counters target spell. Counter more counter magic, more counter magic. Same. This guy's a little bit of a special case. He's counter magic, but he's also, his backside's great. Non-creature spells you control can't be countered. Most of our deck is non-creature spells, and in a mirror match where you're playing against a control deck, he can really change the whole game. Mission Briefing, it's a great way to get more counter spells back from your graveyard. Counter Magic, Ominous Seas. This is another win condition, since the strategy of our deck is mainly stalling out our opponent and drawing cards. This can really also swing a whole game. You're just sitting there countering everything your opponent does. Meanwhile, you are building up counters to get an 8/8, and it doesn't go away. You can keep making 8/8s. Search for Azcanta. This is hard not to have in any control. You got to play this in every control deck. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard. Then if you have 7 more cards in your graveyard, you may transform. Search for Azcanta. Transforms into a land that lets you find counter spells or just non-creature spells in general. Tail's End, good for countering commanders. Wan T Malai-san. So you might think he's kind of random, but the dungeon mechanic is a little bit of a sub theme in this deck because it gives you so much like extra utility. Typically, I go for the Scry one, make treasure token, just the fastest one to complete it. But he is a great early game creature. He helps set up your draws if you go through the right dungeon. Absorb Energy. This is a special counter spell only on Arena. It's really cool. Counter target spell. Cards in your hand that share a card type with that spell perpetually gain this spell cost 1 less to cast. This is very important for if you're playing against another like a deck that uses a lot of instant sorceries, since most of your deck is instants and sorceries. Bar the Gate, more dungeon mechanics, but just a counter spell. Counter magic, counter magic, counter magic. Midnight Clock. You'll notice that I don't have any really ramp in this deck besides Midnight Clock. The reason being is it's very hard to ramp and hold up counter magic simultaneously. So your mana rocks need to be really good. This happens to be one of those cases because it can swing an entire game. It can get you an entire new hand as it just passively sits out there while you draw cards and do what you normally do. Narset, Parter of Veils. She's great against other control decks as well. Each opponent not being able to draw one more than one card is amazing. Neutralize, counterspell with cycling on it. This is a counterspell with foretell. Kind of nifty, a little useful sometimes. Sinister Sabotage. Surveil's a great way to feed Azcanta and dig through our deck. Thought Collapse. We almost will always target ourselves with this, simply for the fact that it's our opponent can use their graveyard as a resource, and it'll at the very least it helps us fuel Azcanta. Tireless Angler is an amazing card advantage engine. You play him out there, he's really underwhelming. No one wants to deal with him at first. And then if you play 2 or 3 islands, you get your value out of him. So not everything in his little spell book is valuable, but it is nice when you get stuff like Sea Dasher Octopus. Voracious Great Shark is another counterspell. And then just you have a whole... Oh, sorry. Let's go back to that one. You have a whole little list of things you can get. Very cool mechanic for the for arena only. Once again, the draft mechanic. Very cool. I like it. Unwind. More counter magic. You know the story. Counter magic. I love this one because it can either be a counter spell or ways to dig through your deck more, and it's instant speed. So if your opponent isn't playing into your counter magic, you can play this, and then you still get value out of it. Archmage Demetrius. Once again, most of your deck is instants and sorceries, and you love to draw cards. Behold the Multiverse. It's very nice to do this, to foretell this card on turn 2, and then all of a sudden have it on turn 3, scrying 2 and drawing 2 cards. Very powerful. Chemist's Insight. It's a draw 2 that you can double dip on. I love that. Drawn from Dreams. Look at the top 7 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any random order. This can help you find turn spells, counter magic, a whole bunch of stuff. Dungeon Geists. This is a way to lock down creatures you don't want untapping. Blue isn't great at like straight up killing creatures, so you get stuff like this, and it kind of does the job. Memory Deluge, just another way to get a bunch of cards in your hand. Has flashback. Rewind, a free counterspell essentially. Spark Double, you can counter Jin-Gitaxias, which will leave you drawing 14 cards a turn, or you can counter copy a whole bunch of other stuff in this deck. We have a lot of Planeswalkers that go really well with Spark Double. Teferi, Master of Time, he is great for card advantage and phasing out creatures you don't want to deal with. He can buy you a lot of time. Karn, Scion of Urza, he's great at looking through your deck, finding yourself things you need, and he can also build you up a nice board state. Graven Lore, this is another great card for end of turn on your opponent's turn. If they're not playing into your counter magic, you can scry a whole bunch and draw a whole bunch. Mind Flayer, at the very least, your opponent has to waste a removal spell on it to get their creature back. At the very best, they don't have any removal spell and you get a free creature. Time Warp, taking turns, it's great because it doesn't exile, so you can get it back with a couple of the cards in this deck. Commence the Endgame, this can be a win condition in some cases. If you have a whole bunch of cards in hand, you can just commence the endgame, make a 14/14 token, sometimes even larger. Discover the Formula, another card unique to Arena only. Seek 3 non-land cards, then non-land cards in your hand. Perpetually gain. This spell costs 1 less to cast. This is fantastic. You play it, you get 3. Seeking is it just looks through your deck for 3 random non-land cards. Tree Meter, this card's fantastic. Flash really makes this card go over the top. If your opponent's attacking and you need to make them have a really bad attack, you can flash this guy in, bounce their big creature, surveil 4, which gives you card advantage, and then you can block something. He can be used for anything because he can bounce any target non-land permanent. Karn's Temporal Sundering, more turn magic. We got a lot of walkers in this deck to use it with. Since Jin-Gitaxias is 10 mana, you can't always depend on him being out. River's Rebuke, just send everything back to your opponent's hand. It's a huge tempo swing, and it usually lets you counter everything on the way back down, depending on the state of the game. Alrun's Epiphany. It's a turn spell with Foretell, but if you foretell it, you get 2 bird tokens, which, in combination with wizard classes level 3, you can really get the birds to be a sizable threat. Hullbreaker Horror. It's almost impossible to lose the game with this guy out. He gives you so much momentum. He can't be countered, has flash, and the returning target non-land permanents to their owner's hands is insane. And you can even do it with spells. So he's like a remand as well. Nezzlehall, just another big win condition. No maximum hand size is nice. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, draw a card. Great in the mirror. Platinum Angel. So this card is mostly a meme. It serves some purpose. Against the aggro matchups, if you can get this out really quickly, and you're trying to stabilize, and this can kind of save you. Really, it's because this deck doesn't do well against creature matchups. And if you can stick a Platinum Angel and just everything your opponent tries to throw at it you can counter, you probably win the game. Omniscience. Our commander's 10 mana, so I didn't think it would be much of a stretch to try and play another 10 mana card. If this card does land with Jin-Gitaxias out, there's no way you can lose. You're drawing 7 cards at the end of your turn, and all your stuff is free. Syncopate, a great early game counter spell. Entrancing Melody is just another way to steal one of your opponent's creatures. Blue Sun Zenith is great for another, just end a turn. Your opponent's not playing into your counter magic. Draw a whole bunch of cards. Shuffles back in. Castle Vantress, you're almost always going to have an island, so it's never going to enter tapped. You can pay 4 to scry 2. Very great in grindy games. 36 snow-covered islands and 1 Reliquary Tower for the no maximum hand size. That is the most important thing in this deck, is the no maximum hand size. So if you decide to play Jin-Gitaxias in Commander as well, I'd recommend running things like Thought Vessel. As many things that you can play that give you the no maximum hand size. I probably wouldn't play Spellbook, however, because Spellbook is only 0 mana. All it does is no maximum hand size, where at least Thought Vessel gives you a mana rock. But thank you all for watching. Please comment down below what you'd like to see next as far as deck techs or gameplay goes. I hope you all had a very happy new year. And